Ever think about the sounds of a city? Not just the obvious stuff, the lots of distant chatter, but the unheard ones. Millions of heartbeats, sirens fading in the distance, the quiet hum of electricity running through the walls. And beneath all that? Well, that's where things get interesting. What if one of those hidden sounds was a voice? A tiny, scared voice lost in the city's dark, forgotten veins, whispering something that would make your blood run cold. Don't leave me down here. For one little girl, this wasn't just a bad dream. It was terrifyingly, suffocatingly real. The city of Viridia was a tale of two worlds, really. You had these shimmering glass towers so tall they seemed to poke the clouds. But then far below, there was this whole other side. A tangled maze of forgotten green spaces, neglected backstreets, and the deep, dark tunnels of its ancient drainage system. Up top, life buzzed with this relentless, almost aggressive energy. Down below, it whispered. And 10-year-old Lily Mayflower, well, she knew more about whispers than most kids her age. Not the whispers from the drains, not yet, but the whispers of a life lived on the fringes, in the faded charm of one of the city's older, more overlooked districts. Lily lived with her grandmother Alara, in a small third-floor apartment that always smelled faintly of old books and dried lavender. Their building, the Nightingale, was a throwback to another time. Its fancy stonework was crumbling now, and the gargoyles that once looked so proud were stained with years of city grime. From their window, Lily could see the glittery downtown skyscrapers, but they felt a million miles away from their own quiet, sometimes tough existence. Ilara was a storyteller. Her mind was like a library of Viridia's lost histories, its forgotten songs, and plenty of cautionary tales. She talked about the city like it was alive, a creature with a shiny skin and a shadowy underside. Everything connects, Lilybug, she'd often say, her voice a soft, raspy sound. The bright and the dark, the seen and the unseen. You've always got to be mindful of where you tread. Lily was a curious kid with a big imagination. She'd often get lost in the world she found in the tattered books Ilara brought home from the second-hand market stalls. She wasn't a loud child. Her adventures mostly played out in her head. Her playground wasn't the neat, tidy parks closer to the city center. It was the overgrown community garden behind the Nightingale, a little patch of stubborn green fighting back against the concrete. That was her sanctuary, a place where she felt safe, where the city's harshness seemed to fade. She knew every twisted tree, every secret spot, every patch of wildflowers that refused to give up. She even named the stray cats that hung around the garden, leaving out saucers of milk when Ilara had a bit extra. Her days had a certain rhythm: school, then the walk home through familiar streets with their peeling paint and colorful murals, homework under the warm glow of the kitchen lamp, and finally, Ilara's stories before bed. But lately, something had felt off. Ilara had been getting more tired, her cough more persistent. The lines on her face seemed deeper, and sometimes her stories had this sadness Lily didn't quite get, but definitely felt. There were hushed phone calls, too, and Lily would overhear strange words like eviction and relocation, words that just hung in the air, heavy with worry. The city itself started to feel different to Lily. Those whispers Ilara talked about, they started to feel more real, more ominous. The shadows in the alleys seemed darker. The rumble of the subway far below their feet sounded less like a train and more like the growl of some sleeping beast. She began to notice the grates in the sidewalks more, those dark metal mouths that seemed to just swallow the rain and whatever else the city threw away. They were just there, part of the city, but now they held this weird, unsettling pull for her. Ilara had always warned her to stay away from them. "Those are the city's secrets, Lily," she'd said. "Best left undisturbed." One blustery autumn afternoon, the kind where the wind seems to carry 1,000 urgent, rustling messages, Lily was walking home from school. The sky was a bruised purple, and the air was thick with the smell of rain and decaying leaves. She clutched a drawing in her hand, a picture of a bright yellow flower she'd seen in a book, a flower that could supposedly grow even in the darkest places. She wanted to show Ilara, to bring a little bit of sunshine into their apartment, which felt increasingly shadowed. She took her usual shortcut. a narrow passage that snaked between an old abandoned textile factory and a high brick wall covered in faded graffiti. The passage was always dim, even on bright days, and the air hung cool and damp. At the end of it, right near where it opened onto her street, was a large circular storm drain, its iron grating choked with matted leaves and city muck. Lily had passed it hundreds of times, barely giving it a second thought, but today something was different. Maybe it was the way the wind howled through the passage, making the loose metal of the old factory creak and groan. Maybe it was that unsettling feeling that had been growing in her for weeks, that sense of things shifting, of solid ground turning shaky. Or maybe it was just a glint of something odd caught in the mess on the grate. Drawn by an impulse she didn't usually have, a flicker of that curiosity normally saved for her books, Lily stepped closer. She knelt, her small fingers brushing away the wet leaves. There, wedged between the iron bars, was a small, tarnished silver locket shaped like a crescent moon. It was delicate, clearly old. As her fingers touched it, a strange coldness seemed to seep into her skin, a cold that had nothing to do with the autumn air. She picked it up. It felt heavier than it looked, and the clasp was broken. She stood, turning the locket over in her palm, a strange unease prickling the back of her neck. The wind seemed to die down, and in the sudden quiet, she thought she heard something. A sigh, a whisper. It was so faint, she couldn't be sure. It seemed to come from the grate itself, from the darkness below. She told herself it was just the wind, or some distant city sound carried through the tunnels. But the feeling of being watched, of something ancient and unseen stirring, made her shiver. Clutching the locket and her drawing, Lily hurried away from the drain, a new, more specific fear now stuck in her young mind. The city's underbelly, Ilara's secrets, suddenly felt very close and very real. The days after Lily found the locket were filled with a growing sense of dread. Ilara's health took a sharp turn for the worse. Her cough became a constant rattling sound in their small apartment, and her stories, once so full of life, became choppy, her voice often trailing off into tired silence. Those hushed phone calls happened more often, sounded more urgent. Lily tried to be brave, to be the sunshine Ilara often called her, but fear was a cold knot twisting in her stomach. She kept the locket hidden in her pocket, its cold weight a constant reminder of that unsettling moment by the drain. One Tuesday, a really bleak one, Lily came home from school to an apartment that was just quiet, eerily quiet. Usually she'd be greeted by the smell of Ilara's weak tea or the sound of the old radio playing softly in the kitchen. Today, nothing. Just a heavy, expectant stillness that made the hairs on the back of Lily's neck stand on end. "Grandma?" she called out, her voice sounding small in the sudden emptiness. "Grandma, I'm home." No answer. She walked through their little apartment. Ilara's worn shawl was draped over the back of her favorite armchair. A half-finished cup of tea sat cold on the small table beside it. Her reading glasses lay on an open book, like she'd just stepped away for a second. But Ilara wasn't there. Cold and sharp started to prickle at Lily. She checked the bedroom, the tiny bathroom. Nothing. Ilara was gone. Then she saw it, a note, written in Ilara's shaky hand, propped against the sugar bowl on the kitchen table. "My dearest Lilybug," it read, "I have to go away for a little while. Some important business. Mrs. Petrov from next door will look in on you. Be good. I love you. Don't worry. Don't worry." How could she not worry? The words were supposed to be reassuring, but they felt hollow, forced. Ilara never left without telling her exactly where she was going and when she'd be back. Important business was too vague, too unlike her. And Mrs. Petrov, bless her, was kind but old and frail herself. She wouldn't be much help if something was truly wrong. Lily reread the note, her heart pounding. The locket in her pocket suddenly felt heavier, colder. The image of the storm drain flashed in her mind, that faint whisper she thought she'd heard. A terrible, irrational thought started to creep in. What if Ilara's important business had something to do with the city's secrets? What if she'd gone looking for something, or someone in those dark, forgotten places? That evening, Mrs. Petrov did come by. her face etched with concern. She confirmed Alara had left earlier in the day, looking pale and distressed, saying only that she had an urgent matter to attend to and would be back as soon as she could. She'd asked Mrs. Petrov to keep an eye on Lily. The old woman tried to comfort Lily, offering her soup and stories, but Lily could barely eat, her mind racing with 1,000 scary what-ifs. Sleep was no escape. She dreamt of dark, winding tunnels, of Alara's voice calling her name, faint and far away. She dreamt of the crescent moon locket, glowing with a faint, sickly light. The next morning, Alara was still gone. The apartment felt cold, empty, stripped of its usual warmth. School was a blur. Lily couldn't concentrate. Her eyes kept drifting to the window, half expecting to see Alara walking down the street, her familiar figure a welcome sight. But the street stayed empty, the city completely indifferent. When school finished, a desperate feeling took hold of her. She couldn't just wait. She had to do something. She had to find Alara. The police, maybe? But what would she tell them? That her grandmother had left a note and gone on important business? They wouldn't understand the fear that was eating her up, the gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. Her feet, almost like they had a mind of their own, led her not towards home, but towards that narrow passage, towards the storm drain. The locket felt like a burning coal in her hand. Maybe Alara had lost it, and had gone back to look for it. It was a flimsy hope, but it was all she had. The passage was even darker and more oppressive than before. The air was stagnant, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else, something faintly metallic and unpleasant. As she approached the drain, her heart hammered against her ribs. She knelt, her eyes scanning the grimy grating. Nothing, and then she heard it. Not a whisper this time, but a soft, distinct sob. It was weak, almost swallowed by the distant city hum, but it was undeniably there, and it was coming from below the grate. "Grandma?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. The sobbing continued, followed by a faint, muffled cry. It wasn't Alara's voice, it was a child's voice. A girl's voice. Terror and a strange, powerful urge to help battled inside Lily. Alara was missing, and now there was a child crying in the drain. Were the two connected? The locket. Who did it belong to? Driven by something she didn't understand, Lily lay flat on the damp ground, pressing her ear against the cold iron grate. The smell from below was stronger here. Decay, stagnant water, and something else. Fear. "Hello?" she called out, her voice a little louder this time. "Is someone there?" A choked gasp, then a small, trembling voice. "Help, please. I can't get out." Lily's blood ran cold. This was real. There was a girl trapped down there, and then the words that would echo in her nightmares, the words that would push her to do something, anything. "Don't leave me. Please, don't leave me down here." The plea was raw, desperate. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a cry against being abandoned, against being forgotten in the darkness. In that moment, Lily's own fear for Alara, her own sense of being lost, seemed to merge with the terror in that unseen girl's voice. She had to help. She didn't know how, but she knew she couldn't just walk away. The city had swallowed someone, and Lily Mayflower was the only one who had heard her cry. Alara's vanishing had led her here, to another more immediate, more terrifying disappearance. The weight of that little girl's plea, "Don't leave me down here," pressed down on Lily, feeling heavier than the iron grate itself. It was pure, raw terror. Lily scrambled back, her mind racing. Who was this girl? How on earth did she get down there? And where was Alara? The questions swirled, each one scarier than the last, and none with easy answers. She knew with a certainty that felt way beyond her 10 years that she couldn't handle this alone. She needed an adult, someone strong, someone who'd actually believe her. Mrs. Petrov? Too frail. The police? She still hesitated. She was terrified they wouldn't take a 10-year-old girl seriously, not without more proof than a voice coming from a drain. Her eyes scanned her surroundings. The decaying factory on one side, the graffiti-covered wall on the other. This wasn't a place people usually hung around. But then, looking towards the street, she spotted a figure she'd seen before. A man who sometimes walked through their neighborhood, always alone, always looking like he had a lot on his mind. Marcus Thorne. He was a man who looked like he was etched with the city's grit. Probably in his late 30s, he carried himself with this quiet intensity, his eyes often distant like he was seeing things other people missed. He wasn't homeless, but he definitely lived on the frayed edges of things, picking up odd jobs, mostly keeping to himself. He rented a small room above a noisy mechanics shop a few blocks away. Lily had seen him in the community garden sometimes, not really tending to plants but just sitting on a quiet bench, sketching in a worn notebook. He rarely spoke to anyone, but he didn't seem menacing. More melancholy, like a shadow that preferred the quiet corners. Ilara had pointed him out once. "That one," she'd said. "He listens to the city's heartbeat, Lily. He hears the things others don't." At the time, Lily hadn't really understood. Now, Ilara's words felt like some kind of sign. Marcus was walking slowly down the street, head bent, lost in thought. Lily took a deep breath. He was her only shot. "Mister," she cried out, her voice thin but urgent. "Mister, please, you have to help." Marcus stopped, lifting his head. He looked around, his brow furrowed like he was surprised someone was talking to him. His gaze landed on Lily, this small, frantic kid gesturing wildly towards the drain. He paused for a moment, his expression hard to read. Then slowly, cautiously, he started walking towards her. As he got closer, Lily could see the tiredness in his eyes, the faint lines of hardship etched around his mouth. He wasn't exactly hero material, not in the storybook sense. He looked like a man who had seen too much of the city's dark side. "What's wrong, kid?" he asked. His voice was low, a bit rough, like stones grinding together. "There's a girl," Lily gasped, pointing at the grate. "She's down there in the drain. She's trapped and she's scared. She said, don't leave me down here." Marcus looked from Lily to the drain, then back to Lily. His first expression was definitely skeptical, maybe even a little annoyed at being bothered. Probably thought she was a kid with an overactive imagination. He'd likely heard his share of strange stories from the city's lost souls. "A girl? In the drain?" he repeated, his tone flat. "You sure you heard that right? Could be a cat, or just the wind playing tricks." "No," Lily insisted, stamping her foot. Frustration and fear made her bold. "It was a girl. I heard her. She's crying. Please, you have to believe me. My grandma always said you listen to the city. You hear things." The mention of her grandmother, and that odd observation, seemed to get his attention. A flicker of something, surprise, recognition, crossed his eyes. The way her small hands were trembling. He glanced at the drain again, his gaze lingering this time. The wind had died down again, and an unnatural stillness settled over the narrow passage. "Okay, kid," he said, his voice a fraction softer. "Okay, show me where." Lily led him to the grate, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. What if the girl had gone silent? What if he couldn't hear her? Marcus crouched down, his large frame surprisingly agile. He pressed his ear to the cold iron, just like Lily had done. His face was unreadable, his eyes narrowed in concentration. For a long moment there was only the distant drone of traffic, the rustle of dry leaves skittering across the pavement. Lily held her breath, then a faint sound, a whimper. So soft Marcus almost missed it. But it was there, human, young, terrified. His expression changed instantly. The skepticism vanished, replaced by a grim understanding. He'd spent enough time in the city, I guess, forgotten corners, to know that darkness often hid terrible things. He looked up at Lily, his eyes meeting hers. This time, there was no doubt. "You're right," he said, his voice low and serious. "There's someone down there." A wave of relief so intense it almost made Lily's knees buckle, washed over her. He believed her. She wasn't alone with this terrifying secret anymore, but the relief didn't last long. It was quickly pushed aside by just how huge this situation was. "We have to get her out," Lily urged, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded, his mind already churning. He stood up, his eyes scanning the heavy iron grate. It was massive, set deep into the concrete around it. "This won't be easy," he muttered, more to himself than to Lily. He pushed at one edge with the toe of his worn boot. It didn't budge. He knelt again, trying to get his fingers into the narrow slots, but they were too small, the metal too slick with grime and moisture. "Is there another way in?" Lily asked, looking around desperately. "A manhole cover, maybe?" Marcus surveyed the alley and the street. "Maybe further down. These systems are usually connected." He looked back at the grate. "Can you talk to her? Keep her calm? Find out her name?" Lily nodded, her throat tight. She knelt again, her face close to the bars. "Hello?" she called softly. "It's me again. There's someone here to help. What's your name?" A sniffle from below, then a tiny voice, hoarse and weak. "Mia. My name is Mia." "Mia," Lily repeated. "My name is Lily, and Marcus is here. He's going to try and get you out. Can you tell us what happened? How did you get down there?" There was a pause, then Mia's voice broken by sobs. I was playing near the old canal path, by the broken fence. I dropped my red ball. It rolled. It rolled into a pipe. I went in to get it. It was dark. I got lost." Her voice trailed off into a fresh wave of weeping. "It's so dark and wet. I want my mommy." The old canal path. Lily knew it. It was a derelict stretch of waterway on the very edge of their district, overgrown and pretty much abandoned. Parts of it were crumbling, the fences broken, leading to exposed drainage culverts and access points to the storm system. It was a dangerous place, a place Alara had strictly forbidden her to go near. Marcus listened intently, his expression grim. "A kid chasing a ball," he said softly, shaking his head. "Happens too easily." He looked at Lily. "Stay here. Keep talking to her. I'm going to look for another access point. Don't try to move this grate yourself, you understand? It's too heavy. You could get hurt or it could fall in on her." Lily nodded, her eyes wide with understanding. Marcus gave her one last look, a strange mixture of concern and something that might have been reluctant admiration. Then he turned and strode purposefully down the passage, his eyes scanning every inch of the ground. Lily turned back to the grate. "Mia? Can you hear me? It's Lily. Marcus is looking for another way to get to you. Just try to stay calm, okay? Are you hurt?" My knee hurts," Mia whispered. "I fell, and I'm so cold. And there are noises. Skittering noises. Rats," Lily thought with a shudder, or worse. The city's underbelly was not a kind place. "Try not to think about them, Mia. Think about something nice, like your red ball. What does it look like?" And so, Lily began to talk to Mia, her voice a small thread of comfort in the suffocating darkness. She asked about the ball, about Mia's favorite color, her favorite game, anything to keep the little girl's mind off the terrifying reality of her prison. She spoke of the community garden, of the stray cats she fed, of Alara's stories. She didn't mention Alara being missing. She didn't want to transfer her own fear to the trapped child. Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. The sky above the narrow slit of the passage began to darken further, the bruised purple deepening into an inky blue-black. The temperature dropped, and a cold, damp chill rose from the drain, carrying with it the foul breath of the tunnels below. Lily shivered, pulling her thin jacket tighter around herself. Mia's responses grew weaker, her voice fainter. The skittering noises she'd mentioned seemed to grow louder, closer. Lily's own fear began to climb. What if Marcus couldn't find another way in? What if they couldn't get Mia out before something worse happened? The locket in her pocket felt like ice. She pulled it out, her fingers tracing the crescent moon. Where had it come from? Who had dropped it here by this very drain? Was it a warning? A clue? Just as despair began to tighten its icy grip on Lily's heart, she heard footsteps. Marcus was returning. His face was grim, streaked with dirt. "Any luck?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus shook his head. "There's a manhole cover about 50 yards down, but it's sealed tight. Looks like it hasn't been opened in years. I tried, but I can't shift it on my own. We need tools. Leverage." He looked at the grate again, then at Lily. "And we need to call for help. Real help. Fire department, rescue. They'll have the equipment." Lily's heart sank. She'd been hoping Marcus could somehow magically fix this. Calling the authorities meant delays, questions. But she knew he was right. Mia was hurt, cold, and terrified. Time was running out. "Okay," she agreed. "But will they come quickly?" "They have to," Marcus said, his jaw set. He pulled out an old battered cell phone. "I'll call them. You keep talking to Mia. Let her know help is on the way." As Marcus made the call, his voice low and urgent as he explained the situation, Lily knelt by the grate again. "Mia, Marcus is calling for help. The fire department. They have special tools to get you out. They'll be here soon. Promise?" Mia's voice was a thread, barely audible. "Promise," Lily said, trying to inject a confidence she didn't feel into her voice. "Just hang on, Mia, please, hang on." The unseen dangers Ilara had warned her about. The city's hidden underbelly were no longer just vague ideas. They were here now, threatening to swallow a little girl whole. And as Lily stared into the impenetrable darkness of the drain, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mia wasn't the only one lost in the city's depths. Ilara was still out there, somewhere, and the crescent moon locket in her hand felt like a cold, silent omen. Waiting for the emergency services felt like forever squeezed into a few agonizing minutes. Marcus paced, his rugged face tight with a mix of worry and frustration. He'd given the dispatcher their location, explained how urgent it was, stressing that a small child was trapped and possibly hurt. Now, all they could do was wait and listen to the chilling sounds coming from the city's depths. Lily stayed pressed close to the grate, her voice a constant soothing murmur aimed into the darkness. She told Mia about her school, about her favorite teacher, Mrs. Gable, who always wore brightly colored scarves. She described the pictures in her favorite book, a story about a brave little star who wasn't afraid of the dark. She was hyper-aware of every sound from below. Mia's soft whimpers, the rustle and skitter of unseen creatures, and something else. A faint, rhythmic dripping, like a leaking pipe. Or maybe water slowly rising. That thought sent a fresh stab of fear through Lily. What if the drain was flooding? Autumn rains in Viridia could be sudden and heavy. A serious downpour could turn these underground tunnels into deadly traps. She glanced up at the sliver of sky visible above the passage. It was still dark, but the air felt heavy, thick with moisture. "Marcus," she whispered, her eyes wide with a new terror. "Do you hear that? The dripping? What if it starts to rain?" Marcus stopped pacing, his head cocked, listening. He heard it too, a persistent, echoing drip. His expression darkened. "Storm drains are designed to carry water away," he said, his voice grim. "If there's a blockage somewhere further down the system, or if we get a sudden cloud burst..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what that meant. The skittering noises from below seemed to get louder, closer, accompanied by faint squeaks. Mia let out a small, terrified cry. "They're coming closer," she sobbed. The scratchy things, I can feel them near my feet." Rats, getting bolder in the darkness, drawn by the scent of a trapped, helpless creature. Lily felt a wave of nausea. "Mia, try to tuck your feet up if you can," she said, her voice shaking even though she tried to sound calm. "Shout at them. Make a loud noise." "I can't, I'm too scared." Mia's voice was dissolving into hysteria. Marcus swore under his breath. He knelt beside Lily. "Mia," he called, his voice firm but not unkind. "Mia, listen to me. This is Marcus. You need to be brave. We're right here. Help is coming. Can you kick out your legs? Or clap your hands? Anything to scare them away." There was a muffled thud from below, then a series of frantic small splashes. I tried," Mia wailed. "They're still here." The feeling of helplessness was suffocating. They were so close, yet separated by a few feet of concrete and iron, and a whole world of unseen terrors. Lily imagined the darkness, the cold, the rising fear, those unseen creatures. It was a nightmare made real. Her own worries about Alara felt distant now, pushed aside by the immediate gut-wrenching horror of Mia's situation. Suddenly, a new sound joined the grim chorus, the distant but rapidly approaching wail of sirens. Hope, sharp and bright, pierced through Lily's fear. "They're coming, Mia!" she cried, relief flooding her voice. "They're almost here." Marcus stood up, peering down the passage towards the street. "Thank God," he muttered, but the city, it seemed, had one more cruel trick up its sleeve. As the sirens grew louder, the first fat drops of rain began to fall. They spattered against the pavement, against the metal of the grate, each drop a tiny hammer blow against their fragile hope. The dripping sound from within the drain seemed to quicken, to become more urgent. "No," Lily whispered, looking up at the darkening sky. "Not now." The rain intensified with frightening speed, transforming from scattered drops into a steady, determined downpour. Water began to gush along the gutters of the passage, heading straight for the drain. From below, Mia screamed. Not a whimper this time, but a full-blown piercing scream of terror. "The water, it's coming in, it's cold, Lily, Marcus, help me." The sound of rushing water from within the drain was now clearly audible, a hungry gurgle that spoke of rising levels. The unseen dangers weren't just the rats or the darkness anymore. It was the drain itself, the very thing designed to channel water, now threatening to become Mia's watery tomb. Marcus's face was a mask of desperate resolve. The rescue team was close, but time had suddenly become their most formidable enemy. He looked at the grate, then at his own hands, raw and scraped from his earlier attempts to find another way in. He knew he couldn't lift it, but he couldn't just stand by and wait. The sound of heavy vehicles, air brakes hissing, announced the arrival of the fire department at the mouth of the passage. Boots pounded on the pavement. Voices, loud and authoritative, cut through the sound of the rain. But for Lily, kneeling by the grate, listening to Mia's terrified cries as the water rose around her, those sounds seemed miles away. The haunting plea, "Don't leave me down here," had taken on a new, terrifying urgency. The city was actively trying to claim its victim, and the race against time had begun in deadly earnest. The whispering drain had found its voice, and it was the predator. The arrival of the Viridia Fire Department's Rescue Squad 1 was like a sudden explosion of focused action in that rain-swept, shadowy passage. Heavy-booted firefighters, dark reflective gear, moved with a practiced speed, their helmet lights cutting sharp beams through the downpour. The air filled with the crackle of radios, short commands, and the clank of heavy equipment being unloaded. A captain, a burly man with a weathered face and calm, assessing eyes named Miller, was the first to reach Marcus and Lily. "What have we got?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise. Marcus, his face slick with rain, quickly laid out the situation. "Young girl, name's Mia, maybe 6 or 7, chased a ball into a culvert near the old canal, got lost in the storm system. She's down there under that grate. Says her knee is injured. Water's rising fast with this rain, and there are rats." Captain Miller peered down at the grate, his expression grim as he took in the sound of Mia's panicked cries and the gurgle of rapidly collecting water. "All right, people, let's move," he yelled. "Pry bars, spreader, and get a pump ready. And someone get this kid further back," he added, nodding towards Lily, who was still kneeling by the drain, her small face pale with terror and cold. A female firefighter, younger, with a kind but no-nonsense look, gently put a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you out of the rain. You've been very brave." Lily resisted. "No, I have to stay. Mia needs to hear my voice." The firefighter exchanged a quick glance with Captain Miller. He gave a curt nod. "All right, but stay with Officer Ramirez here and don't get in the way." Officer Ramirez kept a reassuring arm around Lily, guiding her back a few paces as 2 firefighters with heavy-duty crowbars and a hydraulic spreader tool muscled their way to the grate. The rain was a torrent now, sheeting down, turning the passage floor into a shallow, fast-moving stream that fed directly into the drain. "Mia!" Lily shouted over the roar of the rain and the commotion. "Mia, the firefighters are here! They're going to get you out right now!" "It's so cold!" Mia shrieked, her voice hoarse and cracking with panic. "The water's up to my legs. I can't hold on." The firefighters attacked the grate with skilled efficiency. The crowbars screeched against the iron, sending sparks flying. The sheer weight and years of corrosion made it a tough fight. They strained, their muscles bulging, grunting with the effort. Marcus watched, his fists clenched, every part of him wanting to help, to rip that grate open with his bare hands. "It's not budging much, Cap," one of the firefighters yelled. "This thing is ancient, rusted solid in places." "Use the spreader," Miller commanded, "and get that pump operational. We need to divert some of this surface water before it all goes down there." Other firefighters were already working to set up a portable water pump, its throaty engine sputtering to life, adding to the chaos of sound. They wrestled with a wide suction hose, trying to position it to draw away the torrent of rainwater that was now rushing towards the drain opening. Below, Mia's cries were becoming weaker, punctuated by choked coughs. The sound of splashing was more frantic. "Talk to her, Lily," Marcus urged, his voice tight with desperation. "Keep her fighting." Lily strained her voice against the storm. "Mia, you have to be strong. Think about your red ball. We'll get it back for you. Think about your mommy waiting for you. Don't give up, Mia. Please, don't give up." The hydraulic spreader, a powerful pincer-like tool, was positioned at the edge of the grate. With a whining groan, it began to apply immense pressure. Metal shrieked in protest. The concrete around the grate groaned. Slowly, agonizingly, a gap began to appear. "She's going under." The shout came from one of the firefighters peering through the partially opened grate with a high-powered flashlight. The water's almost up to her chest. She's struggling to keep her head up. Captain Miller didn't hesitate. "No time. Get it open enough for one man. Davies, you're the smallest. Get ready." Davies, a wiry firefighter, was already shrugging off his heavier outer gear, a safety line being clipped to his harness. The spreader whined again, the gap widening by inches. The pump was working, diverting some of the surface flow, but the water level inside the drain was still rising, fed by who knows how many other inlets in the submerged maze. "I can't breathe." Mia's voice was a thin, gurgling whisper, barely audible above the storm. "Almost there, Mia. Hold on," Davies shouted, his face set in grim determination, poised at the opening. With a final ear-splitting screech of tortured metal, the grate yielded enough. A section tilted upwards, creating a narrow, jagged opening. "Go, go, go," Miller yelled. Davies, flashlight in hand, slipped feet first into the black, churning water of the drain, the safety line playing out behind him. The darkness swallowed him instantly. Above, everyone waited, the rain lashing their faces, their breath held in a collective agony of suspense. Lily clutched Officer Ramirez's hand, her knuckles white, her eyes fixed on the dark hole. Marcus stood like a statue, his gaze burning into the opening, every muscle taut. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The only sounds were the pounding rain, the thrum of the pump, and the anxious crackle of the captain's radio. Then, a muffled shout from below. "Got her. She's unconscious, but I have her. Pull us up, slowly." A wave of collective relief, so potent it was almost physical, swept through the crew. "Haul him up," Miller commanded, his voice thick with emotion. Two firefighters began to pull on the safety line, hand over hand. The rope grew taut. Slowly, Davies' helmet emerged from the churning water, then his shoulders. Cradled in his arms was a small, limp form, Mia. Her face was deathly pale, her clothes soaked and dark, her eyes closed. A long, ugly scrape ran down one of her legs, her red sneaker missing from that foot. Davies, gasping for breath, water streaming from him, carefully passed Mia's still form up to the waiting hands of his comrades. Paramedics, who had arrived with the fire crew, were instantly at her side, their movements swift and efficient. They laid her on a portable stretcher, immediately beginning resuscitation efforts, shouting observations, calling for oxygen. Lily watched, her heart in her throat. Mia looked so small, so fragile. Is she okay?" she whispered to Officer Ramirez, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the rain. Ramirez squeezed her hand. "They're doing everything they can, sweetie. She's a fighter." Marcus moved closer, his eyes fixed on the paramedics working on Mia. He saw the slight rise and fall of her chest as they administered oxygen. He saw a flicker of her eyelids. She was alive. As the paramedics prepared to rush Mia to the ambulance, one of them noticed something clutched tightly in her small, cold hand. Gently, he pried her fingers open. It was a battered, mud-stained, bright red ball. A collective sigh went through the group. Even in the face of such terror, in the suffocating darkness, she hadn't let go of her small, innocent treasure. Davies was helped out of the drain, shivering and covered in filth, but grinning with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "Nasty down there, Cap," he said, his teeth chattering. Water was rising fast. Another minute or two. He didn't need to finish. They all knew. Captain Miller clapped him on the shoulder. "Good work, Davies. All of you." He looked over at Lily and Marcus. "And you two. You saved her life. That little girl is alive because you heard her and because you acted." Lily felt a warmth spread through her despite the cold and the rain. Mia was alive. They had pulled her back from the brink, back from the city's hungry darkness. As the ambulance, its siren now a beacon of hope rather than alarm, sped away into the stormy night, a sense of profound exhaustion settled over Lily. The adrenaline that had kept her going for hours drained away, leaving her trembling and weary. The haunting plea, "Don't leave me down here," had been answered, at least for Mia. But as Marcus gently draped a firefighter's discarded jacket around her shivering shoulders, Lily's gaze drifted back to the still open drain, its jagged metal teeth slick with rain. The crescent moon locket was still clutched in her other hand. Mia was safe. But Ilara was still missing. And the city's dark underbelly, though momentarily beaten, still held its secrets, its unseen dangers and its whispers. The fight was not yet over. The immediate chaos of Mia's rescue slowly started to wind down. The rain began to soften too, the heavy downpour easing into a persistent drizzle, almost as if the city itself was sighing in relief, or maybe regret. The firefighters methodically packed their equipment, their movements efficient even though you could see how tired they were. The temporary pump was silenced, its engine sputtering into quiet. The jaggedly opened grate was covered with a heavy-duty temporary plate, a stark metal scar on the alley floor. Captain Miller took statements from Marcus and Lily. His earlier gruffness was gone, replaced with a quiet respect. Lily recounted her story, her voice still trembling a bit, explaining how she'd first heard Mia's cries, her worry about her missing grandmother, Ilara, and how she'd found Marcus. Marcus backed up her account, his own words few but clear, detailing his attempts to find another way in and his decision to call for help. Officer Ramirez stayed with Lily, a comforting presence. She had this gentle way about her that reminded Lily a little of Ilara. She made sure Lily had something warm to drink from a thermos one of the firefighters offered, and quietly asked more questions about Ilara, noting down the details with a concerned frown. "We'll put out a notice for your grandmother, Lily," she said softly. "We'll do everything we can to find her." As the fire trucks rumbled away, leaving the narrow passage quiet and eerily empty again, an ambulance returned. Not for Mia, but for Lily. "Standard procedure," Captain Miller explained, just to get her checked over at the hospital. She was cold, exhausted, and had been through a heck of an ordeal. Marcus insisted on going with her. He felt this sense of responsibility for the small, fiercely determined girl who had dragged him into this desperate night. The hospital was a shock of bright lights and sterile smells after the dark, damp passage. Nurses fussed over Lily, checking her temperature, her breathing. They gave her dry clothes and a warm blanket. She answered their questions in a flat voice, her mind still replaying those terrifying moments by the drain. Mia's weakening cries, the rising water, the heart-stopping wait during the rescue. Marcus sat in the waiting area, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep tiredness and a return of his own familiar melancholy. He wasn't used to this much intense human connection, this raw, shared experience of fear and hope. For years, he'd just drifted through the city, an observer, a ghost in his own life. Tonight, Lily had pulled him out of the shadows, forced him to engage, to care. It was unsettling, yet not entirely unwelcome. He found himself thinking about what Alara had apparently said, according to Lily. He listens to the city's heartbeat. He hears the things others don't. Maybe the old woman had seen something in him that he hadn't seen in himself. A doctor eventually declared Lily physically okay, just tired and emotionally drained. They wanted to contact social services, since her grandmother was missing. Lily's heart clenched at that. She didn't want to go with strangers. She wanted Alara. It was Officer Ramirez who smoothed things over, at least for now. She explained that Mrs. Petrov, the elderly neighbor, was expecting Lily and would look after her until there was news of Alara. She also assured the hospital staff that a formal missing person report was being processed for Alara Mayflower. As dawn started to cast a pale gray light over Viridia, Officer Ramirez drove Lily and Marcus back towards their neighborhood. The city looked washed clean by the night storm, but Lily knew the dirt and darkness were still there, hidden just beneath the surface. When they reached the Nightingale, Mrs. Petrov was waiting, her wrinkled face a map of worry and relief. She hugged Lily tightly, clucking like a mother hen. "Oh, you poor child. You poor child. What a night. Is the little girl? Is she all right?" "She's alive," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. They got her out. Marcus stood awkwardly by, not quite sure what his role was now. He'd seen Lily safely back. His part in this chapter seemed to be over. He started to mumble a goodbye, ready to melt back into his solitary life. But Lily turned to him, her eyes, though shadowed with exhaustion, holding a new strength. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice clear. "You believed me. You helped Mia." Marcus just nodded, a lump in his throat. "You were the brave one, kid," he managed to say. "You heard her when no one else did." Before he could leave, Officer Ramirez spoke. "Mr. Thorne, we might need to speak with you again regarding Mrs. Mayflower. And Lily," she added, turning to the girl. "We'll be in touch as soon as we have any news, any at all." Lily watched Marcus walk away, a solitary figure disappearing into the city's awakening streets. She wondered if she'd ever see him again. He was a man of shadows, and she worried the shadows would just swallow him back up. Inside her apartment, the silence was deafening. Alara's shawl still lay on the chair. Her book was still open. It was like time had stopped the moment her grandmother had walked out the door. Mrs. Petrov made her hot chocolate and tucked her into her own small bed, promising to stay until she fell asleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Lily lay there, clutching the crescent moon locket, its cold metal a familiar weight in her palm. Mia was safe, but the cost of that safety, the terror of those hours, felt like a heavy weight. And the bigger mystery, the one that had led her to that drain in the first place, was still unsolved. Where was Alara? Was her disappearance connected to this drain, to this locket? The haunting plea, "Don't leave me down here," echoed in her mind. But now it wasn't just Mia's voice she heard. It was a deeper, more unsettling fear, a fear that someone else she loved was lost in the city's unforgiving darkness, waiting to be found. The cold dawn brought little comfort, only the stark realization that the fight to bring her grandmother home was just beginning. The days that followed were a strange, unsettling kind of blur for Lily. The city, once so familiar, now seemed full of hidden depths and watchful eyes. Every storm grate she passed, every shadowed alley was a sharp reminder of Mia's terrifying ordeal and Alara's continued aching absence. The police investigation into Alara's disappearance didn't turn up much. She had simply vanished, leaving behind only that cryptic note and a heartbroken granddaughter. News of Mia's rescue spread through the neighborhood, a small miracle in a city that often seemed indifferent to one person's troubles. Lily was hailed as a hero, the brave little girl who had saved another's life. People she barely knew would stop her on the street to tell her how courageous she was. But the praise felt hollow to Lily. She hadn't found Ilara. That was the rescue that mattered most to her, the one that felt more and more impossible. Mia, she learned from Officer Ramirez, was recovering well. She'd suffered from exposure and a nasty infection in her injured leg, but her spirit, amazingly, was tough. She was already asking for her red ball, which the hospital had cleaned and kept for her. Lily felt a small warm glow at that news, a tiny spark of light in her own growing darkness. Marcus Thorne surprisingly didn't entirely disappear back into the city's shadows. He checked in on Lily a few times. Once he brought her a small illustrated book of city birds he'd found at a market, a silent offering of comfort. He didn't say much, but his presence was a steady, grounding thing. He too seemed changed by that night. The wall of his solitude was showing a few small cracks. He started sketching in the community garden again, but this time, he occasionally sketched Lily as she sat reading, a quiet acknowledgement of what they'd been through together. One afternoon, about a week after Mia's rescue, Officer Ramirez came to the Nightingale. She had news, but her expression was somber. "Lily," she began gently, sitting beside her on the worn sofa. "We found something we think belonged to your grandmother." Lily's heart leaped, then immediately sank with dread. Officer Ramirez carefully opened a small evidence bag. Inside, nestled on a piece of sterile cotton, was a tarnished silver locket, shaped like a crescent moon. It was identical to the one Lily carried in her pocket. "We found this in the storm drain system," Officer Ramirez explained, her voice soft. "Not far from where Mia was trapped, but in a different, older tunnel. It was caught on a rusted ladder rung leading to a sealed-off section. We also found this." She produced another bag. This one contained a small, water-damaged notebook, the kind Ilara always used for her stories and jottings. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She reached out a trembling hand and took the locket from her own pocket, placing it beside the one Officer Ramirez had brought. 2 crescent moons, side by side. "There was an inscription inside the one we found," Officer Ramirez continued, carefully opening the locket from the drain. "It's very faint. It says, 'For Ilara, my moon and stars. From Arthur.'" Tears welled in Lily's eyes. Arthur. That was her grandfather's name. He had died long before Lily was born. Ilara rarely spoke of him. The pain was still too raw. This locket, then, was Ilara's, a precious keepsake. The notebook was mostly unreadable, its pages warped and smeared by water and grime. But on one of the last pages, a few phrases were just barely legible, written in Ilara's familiar spidery hand. "Must find it. Arthur's last gift. The old access point. The whispers. They know the way." A chilling realization dawned on Lily. Ilara hadn't just wandered off. She had gone into the drains deliberately. Perhaps she had lost her own precious locket, Arthur's locket, and had gone searching for it, venturing into the city's dangerous underbelly. Or perhaps, Lily thought, remembering Ilara's increasing frailty and occasional confusion, her grandmother had been chasing a memory, a whisper from the past, and had become disoriented, lost. The locket Lily had found, the first locket, remained a mystery. Whose was it? Had Ilara dropped it earlier, then gone back for it, only to lose her own identical one in the process? Or was it something else entirely? A strange coincidence. Another lost secret from the city's depths. There was no miraculous discovery of Ilara. The search teams combed the accessible parts of the drain system, but the older sealed-off sections were just too unstable, too dangerous to explore thoroughly without massive engineering work. Ilara Mayflower remained missing, presumed lost to the city's dark veins. The news was a crushing blow for Lily. The hope she had clung to, however fragile, finally shattered. Mrs. Petrov held her as she wept, her small shoulders shaking with a grief too large for her years. In the weeks that followed, arrangements were made. Social services found a foster family for Lily, a kind couple who lived in a quieter part of the city with a small garden. It wasn't the Nightingale, it wasn't Ilara, but it was safe. Before she left, Lily went to the community garden one last time. Marcus was there sketching. She sat beside him, silent for a long time. "I'm leaving," she finally said, her voice small. Marcus nodded slowly, his eyes sad. "I heard." He closed his sketchbook and turned to her. "Viridia is a hard city, Lily. It takes things. But sometimes it gives things back. Like Mia." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth gray stone, polished by countless tides, likely found on one of his solitary walks by the city's river. "For you," he said, "something solid to hold on to." Lily took the stone. It was cool and comforting in her palm. She then held out her own hand. In it lay the crescent moon locket she had found, the first one. "I want you to have this, Marcus," she said. "To remember. To keep listening to the city. Maybe it will tell you its secrets one day. Maybe it will tell you where Alara is." Marcus looked at the locket, then at Lily's earnest, tear-streaked face. He took it, his calloused fingers closing around the delicate silver. "I will, Lily," he promised, his voice rough with an emotion he rarely showed. "I'll keep listening." Lily Mayflower left the old neighborhood, carrying with her the memory of her grandmother's stories, the terror of Mia's rescue, the weight of Alara's unknown fate, and a small, smooth stone. The city had taken much from her, but it had also shown her a courage she didn't know she possessed, and the unexpected kindness of a lonely man. The drain in the narrow passage remained, a dark mouth in the urban landscape. Sometimes children from the neighborhood would dare each other to get close, whispering stories of the girl who was rescued and the old woman who vanished. The city continued its relentless rhythm, its glass towers gleaming, its underbelly steeped in shadows. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind blew just right, some said you could still hear a whisper from the drain, a plea, a warning, a secret longing to be heard. "Don't leave me down here." A reminder that even in the heart of a bustling metropolis, there are forgotten places, lost souls, and stories waiting to be uncovered, if only someone is brave enough to listen. The whispers of tomorrow, carrying echoes of the past, forever entwined with the city's dark, beating heart. Stories like Lily's and Mia's, they remind us that courage can pop up in the most unexpected places, right? And that even one voice can make a huge difference in the overwhelming noise of the world. What are some of the unheard stories in your own communities? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's bring more of these hidden narratives to light. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Viridia's darkness. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, and maybe share it with someone who appreciates tales of mystery, survival, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. The city holds its breath, its secrets buried deep. She whispered from the drain. "Don't leave me down here" is more than just a story about a rescue. It's a look at what lies beneath the surface, both literally and metaphorically. It speaks to how vulnerable the lost can be, the bravery of an unexpected hero, and the haunting truth that some cries for help are never really silenced. They linger, like whispers in our collective memory, urging us to look closer, to listen harder, and to never forget those who might be trapped in the shadows, just hoping for a lifeline. What whispers do you hear?